How can a franchise win a championship and yet break its own heart at the same time? The story of the Dallas Mavericks may lie precisely in the answer to this question. This team arrived in a city truly obsessed with soccer in 1980 with a single hope, and 40 years later, it has a championship ring, a German legend, broken hearts, and one of the most controversial trades in NBA history. The Mavs didn't become what they are today in a single season. It took years of bold decisions, along with devastating losses and breathtaking risks. Throughout this video, we're counting down the 10 critical moments that forever changed this team's history, and I'll say right off the bat that you absolutely have to see number 1. Before we continue, I want to make one thing clear. This channel will continue to take a close look at the very heart of the NBA, keep its finger on the pulse, and bring you content you'll love. So, subscribing to the channel is the best way to support us. Let's dive right into the video. 10. The empty arena where it all began. In 1980, as many of us know, Dallas was known as a football city, and in the shadow of the Cowboys, no one really gave the basketball team much of a chance. However, Norm Sonju spent years going door to door to convince businessman Don Carter, and on May 1st, 1980, the NBA accepted Dallas as the league's 23rd team. The name came from a TV Western. Maverick refers to a rule-breaking lone cowboy. In their first official game at Reunion Arena, they managed to defeat the Spurs 103-92. Of course, the reality gradually began to set in afterward. The first season ended with just 15 wins and 67 losses. So why exactly is this moment significant? Because the reality is that a handful of investors built a franchise from scratch, despite empty seats and perhaps a few mocking laughs. If that foundation hadn't been laid back then, there would be no Dirk, no championship, and we wouldn't be able to tell the story we're sharing today. 9. The team's first identity in the presence of the Lakers' wall. The fact is the Mavericks didn't remain in a weak position for long. In the 1981 draft, for example, they managed to select both Mark Aguirre with the number 1 pick and Rolando Blackman with the number 9 pick on the same night. When Derek Harper and Sam Perkins were added to the mix, the team's first true identity was instantly born, fast-paced, scoring-hungry, and fearless. They went on to reach the 1988 Western Conference Finals, where they faced the Lakers led by Magic Johnson, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and James Worthy. At that time, the young Dallas team managed to take the series to a Game 7, but on June 4th, 1988 at the Forum, they couldn't prevent a 117-102 loss. Of course, this series firmly put Dallas on the NBA map and taught the city just what it feels like to be on the big stage. But it also seemed to whisper a bitter lesson: in this league, just being good is never enough. 8. From the top to the bottom. The Dark Age. The team that made it to the conference finals in 1988 began to turn into the league's nightmare over the next few years. The turning point here was essentially a trade. On February 15, 1989, Dallas sent its leading scorer, Mark Aguirre, to Detroit in exchange for Adrian Dantley, and Aguirre went on to win back-to-back championships in 1989 and 1990. Dallas, meanwhile, went into a free fall. They finished the 1992-93 season with just 11 wins and 71 losses. Based on their point differential, they earned the distinction of being statistically the worst team in league history up to that point. The following year, they went 13-69, marking the worst back-to-back seasons in league history. The three J's, Jim Jackson, Jamal Mashburn, and Jason Kidd, became the team's hope. However, some rifts in the locker room dashed that hope, and Kidd was forced to be traded in 1996. So, why is this fall to rock bottom so significant? Because the reality is that it forced the franchise to be reborn. In other words, if Dallas hadn't hit rock bottom, perhaps the bold moves we're about to discuss might never have been made. 7. Steve Nash's departure. It's the summer of 2004. Two young Hall of Famers were officially shining at the heart of the Mavericks. One was Dirk Nowitzki, the other was Steve Nash. However, Nash became a free agent, and the Suns put a massive 6-year offer on the table. Mark Cuban, heeding doctors' warnings, believed that the 30-year-old Nash's physical condition would deteriorate and chose not to match the offer. Nash ended up going to Phoenix and was named the league's MVP 2 years in a row during the 2005-2006 season. Years later, Cuban admitted this was by far the biggest mistake of my life. So why is this moment so critical? Because it might be one of the biggest what-if questions in NBA history. In other words, if Nash and Dirk had played alongside each other for a few more years, Dallas's fate might have unfolded very differently. As you know, sometimes what changes a franchise the most isn't the move you make, but perhaps the moves you were afraid to make. 6 June 2006 Finals. The pressed victory parade. It's the 2006 NBA Finals. Dallas was in the finals for the first time in its history and was the clear favorite. Facing them was Miami, featuring Dwyane Wade and Shaq. They managed to win the first 2 games. In fact, the press had even started publishing the route for the championship victory parade. Then, all of a sudden, everything changed. In Game 3, a double-digit lead melted away, and Wade became unstoppable. In Game 5, he made 21 of 25 free throws and scored 43 points. Miami won 4 straight games to take the series 4-2, and this loss officially branded Dirk as the guy who can't win the big game. Even more painful came right after. In 2007, they finished atop the league with 67 wins. Dirk was named MVP, but they couldn't avoid being eliminated in the first round by the number 8-seeded Warriors. This double blow, coming one after another, was etched into the franchise's soul and perhaps transformed it into an entirely different team. 5. Mark Cuban and the Cultural Revolution. Now, let's go back together to January 4th, 2000. Internet billionaire Mark Cuban managed to purchase a majority stake in the team from Ross Perot Jr. for $285 million. In the 20 years prior to Cuban's arrival, Dallas had won only 40% of its games, and the stands were practically empty. Cuban changed everything overnight. He sat on the sidelines, renovated the facilities, spent generously, and officially transformed a culture accustomed to losing into a culture of winning. If you ask why this moment was so critical, because for the first time, Dallas began to become a very attractive destination for stars, and the groundwork for the 2011 championship was effectively laid this way. The ironic part is that Cuban sold the team to the Adelson and Dumont families in 2023 at a valuation of exactly $3.5 billion, and later said to Mohamed, "I don't regret selling it, I regret who I sold it to." That sale likely opened the door to the number 1 moment. 4. The Luka risk. Draft Night 2018. I want to talk about Draft Night 2018. The Atlanta Hawks selected a Slovenian prodigy with the number 3 pick, Luka Doncic. Dallas stepped in. They traded their number 5 pick, Trae Young, and a protected future first-round pick to acquire Luka. That night, Luka posed on stage wearing a Hawks cap, but in reality, he was already a Dallas player. Guess what happened? He was named Rookie of the Year and made the All-NBA team 5 years in a row. In 2022, he led his team to the Western Conference Finals. In Game 7, they even won comfortably on the road with a score of 123-90. The critical point of that moment was this. He brought a new face, new hope, and truly new star power to the post-Dirk era. Luka was, in a sense, Dallas's next 10 years. At least, that's how it was supposed to be in reality. 3. The game-changing move. The Dirk Nowitzki trade. I want to talk about the 1998 draft, perhaps one of the most brilliant moves on this list. Dallas selected Robert Traylor with the 6th overall pick and immediately traded him to Milwaukee. In return, they acquired a blonde German whom no one quite understood. Selected with the 9th overall pick, Dirk Nowitzki. Steve Nash also joined the roster that same night. In fact, the press heavily criticized this trade. Don Nelson took a huge risk and it paid off. Dirk was selected to the All-Star Game 14 times, was named MVP in 2007, and even made it into the Hall of Fame after scoring 31,000 points and playing 21 seasons with a single team, an NBA record. Perhaps we could even say this, without Dirk, the franchise's identity hadn't quite fallen into place. In other words, he was, in a sense, the heart, the patience, and the pride of Dallas. But of course, even a legend often isn't enough on his own. Their disappointments, with the exception of a single night, always ended in the same place. 2. The 2011 championship. In 2011, LeBron James, Dwyane Wade, and Chris Bosh had built a super team in Miami, and everyone had officially declared them the favorites. Facing them was an aging but experienced Dallas team that seemed to be haunted by the ghosts of 2006. Tyson Chandler brought the toughness the defense had been lacking. Jason Terry, Jason Kidd, and Sean Marion truly formed the right pieces. They then beat Portland and swept the defending champion Lakers. They also managed to take down the Young Thunder. Now they were in the finals, where they defeated Miami 4-2. Game 6 ended 105-95, and Dirk Nowitzki was named Finals MVP. One of the main reasons this moment was so pivotal was that it finally erased the "can't win big games" label that had been attached to Dirk since 2006. I can confidently say that this was the franchise's only championship and remains the night this city is most proud of, even to this day. 1. A true earthquake. The Luka Doncic trade. And here we are at number 1. It's the early hours of February 2nd, 2025. The Mavs traded their 25-year-old franchise face, Luka Doncic, to the Los Angeles Lakers. In return, they received Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a single 2029 first-round pick. Naturally, the league was left in shock. ESPN called it one of the worst trades in history and reported that even Mark Cuban was caught off guard by the move. The mid-season trade of 2 All-NBA players for one another was virtually unprecedented in league history. General manager Nico Harrison defended the decision by saying, "Defense wins championships." But Dallas fans viewed it as nothing short of betrayal. They even took to the streets, leaving wreaths at the base of Dirk's statue. So, why is this moment number 1? Because just 1 year earlier, Luka had led this team to the NBA Finals. Even though they lost to Boston 4-1, the window to a championship was essentially wide open, and this trade effectively shut that window overnight, plunging the franchise into a full-blown identity crisis. Then something strange happened. Dallas won the draft lottery with a 1.8% chance and selected Cooper Flagg with the number 1 pick after starting at number 11. Yet, the anger simply wouldn't subside. In November 2025, following a poor start to the season, Nico Harrison was fired. In other words, perhaps no single moment has ever changed the future of the Dallas Mavericks so drastically and so suddenly. If we put all of this together, what you have here is a franchise that spans from its founding to the present day, or from Dirk to Luka. And this team isn't just about a championship and star players, it's also about an empty arena, a parade covered by the press, and a dream that crumbled overnight. These 10 critical moments are what have shaped today's Dallas. And we're talking about a team that's used to rising from the ashes, whose heart has been broken time and again but has never given up. Now, a clear question lies before us. Will the Cooper Flagg era be able to heal the wound left by Luka's departure? I'd like to leave the floor to you on this one. Do you think the 2011 championship should be number 1, or was the Luka trade really the most critical moment? Also, what kind of success do you expect from the Dallas Mavericks next season? Be sure to leave a comment, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.